I'm Jenna Kantor.
And I'm Marissa Schaeffer, and welcome to Physiotherapy Performance Perspectives, a physical therapy podcast for performing artists.
Today we are interviewing Suzanne Semanson, who has had over 20 years of experience in the performing arts and movement. Currently, Suzanne works as a dance medicine physical therapist at a busy New York City clinic. And she has cared for all types of dancers, including providing backstage care at several Broadway shows. She is also a lab instructor at Columbia University's program in physical therapy, where students are often heard saying WWSD. What would Suzanne do?
Suzanne is here to discuss foot health and care, so let's dive right in.
First question, why do you think it is important to focus on foot care for performers?
I think it's really important to focus on foot care performers because it basically can make or break whether they can dance or need to stop dancing. And foot care really starts with simple techniques as simple as making sure that your feet are clean and dry, and that depending on what kind of shoe wear you're in, that it's supportive and fits your foot well. Additionally, how your feet spend their time outside of your dance technique and what kind of footwear you're in also can really play a role as to how healthy their foot is and how well it can perform for them.
Cool. So our next question is a two-parter. What is the most common injury you see in the foot, and also what usually causes this injury?
I'd say the most common injuries I see in the foot are ankle sprains and stress fractures. And stress fractures that exist on a continuum of bone stress that can be as minimal as exactly that, stress to the bone, and then if it continues or persists, it can be a stress fracture. If that continues or persists, it can turn into an actual fracture to the bone. With those two injuries, we know in the dance medicine research that dancers are most often injured when they are fatigued and tired. So both of those injuries can actually fit pretty well within that paradigm. Additionally, we can see that the predisposing. So with these most common injuries, if we're looking at what can lead to these injuries, we typically divide it into two categories. The first category being extrinsic or external factors, so what in the environment of the dancer may be contributing to an ankle sprain or a stress fracture. What kind of flooring are they dancing on? Is it a sprung floor? Is it a concrete floor? What kind of footwear are they in? Is it a supportive shoe? Is it barefoot? Is it, in some shows, they're dancing in dress shoes, so very little support in those cases. What is the lighting like? What is the surface that they're dancing like? Is it flat surface or is it variable? So those kinds of factors can certainly set someone up to potentially have an injury, specifically a sprain or a stress fracture. The other category of factors that can contribute to these injuries are considered intrinsic factors that exist within the dancer. So we're considering what is their energy level, are they fatigued, have they had a long day of dancing and they're trying to bang out one more run through of the show, did they sleep well the night before, are they well nourished and hydrated, do they have any additional stresses in their personal life that could be kind of clouding their clarity with their performance level. What is their strength like? What is their motor control, coordination through their whole body? So are they a well-trained dancer? Also, what is their internal facility and the track that they're put in? So there's some musical theater dancers who may not have as much technical training as others, but the track that they're expected to do, may be a little bit beyond what their training is, but they can still kind of get through it. So when you kind of look at those factors, there's some that you can change and there's some that you can, and so our job as physical therapists is to help identify what those factors are and be able to change and influence the things that can be changed.
You started to go into this a little bit in what you were just speaking about. What other body parts above the foot can have an impact on foot function?
So within the physical therapy world, we talk about the leg or lower extremity being part of a chain. And so when a dancer is dancing or even doing something as simple as walking, each time their foot comes in contact with the floor, those forces travel all the way up through the leg into the hip and into the trunk. So if there is any impairments in the way the knee or hip joint can move, or the muscles around the hip or knee joint, or even as high up as in the trunk, if there's any impairment in how they're able to function in the strength of those muscles and how they're able to coordinate their contractions and how they're timed with each other, that can certainly impact the way the foot is able to absorb those forces. The foot does have a really unique role in being very compliant and flexible to be able to form to different surfaces. If you think about walking across rocks versus a flat surface, but it also, because it is how most of us are come in contact with the ground in a weight-bearing position, it's crucial that it is structurally stable enough to support the rest of the body. So if there's anything above it that is compromised, that leaves gives an opportunity for those forces to basically be localized within the foot, and that's where you can see repetitive stress in some of those tissues.
So changing gear a little bit, when not performing or in dance class, how should one care for their feet?
Care for your feet begins with something as simple as hygiene. So the skin on our feet is our first barrier of protection to bacteria and certainly sharp objects. And so you want to make sure that your feet stay clean. I certainly have treated plenty of dancers who will come into their treatments with incredibly dirty feet, and they neglect their feet from that standpoint. And it's really important just to keep them clean and dry. When you come out of the shower, you want to make sure that you take the time to dry the skin between your toes so that moisture doesn't collect and create an opportunity for athlete's foot to develop. If you have any developed calluses, and something's, you have skin that splits, you want to make sure that you protect that, or, take care of those calluses. Yes, you want to keep calluses as a protection, but there is, you want to make sure to manage that appropriately. Mm-hmm. The next recommendation certainly is the kind of shoe wear that you use. You want to make sure it's really supportive, so the time that your feet spend outside of your dance movements and hours spent dancing is an opportunity for your feet to essentially rest from that work. And if you're in an unsupportive footwear, and specifically I'm thinking of a super floppy flip-flop, that is just creating more stress and work for your foot when it really just needs that time to take a rest from working. A couple of things that I think of regarding footwear is you want to make sure that it fits your foot appropriately and it has enough structural support to it that it can provide the support needed to your foot.
So next question. When should you go seek care for your foot?
Any kind of pain that persists and is compromising the dancer's ability to get the job done is a time that you want to certainly seek medical attention. So that means if you're walking with pain more than 24 hours, if you have pain when you are attempting to just stand on a single leg, anything that within your dance technique you feel you're compensating or avoiding certain movements within your dance technique because of pain is a time to seek medical attention. Because even if you're able to kind of fudge through it a little bit, the body is really intelligent that if it perceives pain or stress somewhere, it's going to find a different avenue of how to get the job done. And that's where those sneaky little compensations start to arise that can be really difficult to identify and fully address. So that's definitely when I would recommend someone to seek attention.
I actually got a little confused there because you were saying so much good information, but I think I want to dive in a little bit more because it seems like you could say more, which is exciting. Do you have any specific preferred type of footwear that you would like to have on dancers?
I don't typically make specific footwear recommendations, but I definitely will of what to wear, aside from there's some principles that I will teach them that they can seek out when they're shoe shopping. What I definitely will correct is if they're wearing unsupported flip-flops. That is a big, I don't want to say a big no, but that's something that I want to correct because that, like I said before, that time spent out of dancing, you want to have support footwear. And particularly where we live in New York City, it's all concrete and there's a lot of walking involved. Flip-flops, most flip-flops do not do the job of being able to absorb those forces sufficiently without adding additional stress to the foot. The principles I will teach the dancer regarding how to find supportive footwear is, one, the rigid support of the sole of the shoe. So if you hold the shoe between your hands, if you hold your hands up in front of you, your palms are facing each other, and you're supporting the length of the shoe between your hands, and you squish the shoe by bringing your hands together. If the shoe easily folds and collapses, specifically like where your toes are, without much resistance, that's not a very supportive shoe, and I would not recommend that for a dancer. So you want the sole of the shoe to have a little bit of rigidity, that it may bend a little bit, but it's not just going to collapse to that kind of compressive force. Secondly, you want a shoe that has a wide enough, in a ballet shoe, you're thinking about a toe box, but in a street shoe, that it's wide enough across the metatarsals that they're not compressed. If any kind of compression in the metatarsals, or if it's a pointy shoe, that can certainly contribute to bunions or neuromas between the metatarsals, where the tissue will get irritated and you may have some extra growth of nerve tissue there. So you don't want to give your body any reason to try to bolster itself against increased compressive forces. The third thing I would say is the heel height. So you want to minimize the amount of time that you're spent in a high heel stiletto style shoe, or make choices if you are going to invent that you want to wear something that maybe bring an extra pair of shoes to change into, or that your walking is done in more supportive footwear. When I go out and I want to wear my heels, that's the night where I'm going to take this, I'm going to take a cab and not trudge through the subway. Or if you're sitting more because you're going to a seated event, you may be able to get away with high-heeled shoes there. So you want to be thoughtful about your shoe wear choices. Another thing that I consider too is, you may have however many pairs of shoes you have, and you have some that are more supportive, you may have some that are maybe not as comfortable. And if you have a day where in less supportive footwear, or your high-heeled shoe, or maybe doesn't fit as well, but you're making that sacrifice for style, the next day be kind to your feet and be a more supportive foot. Don't be in shoes that don't fit well, or they're kind of compromise your foot for consecutive days, because that's where you're going to get that buildup of the stress. So you want to be kind to your feet. It's this give and take little compromise relationship you have with them.
Yeah. Marissa, you want to take that last beautiful question?
Yes. We're going to change gears a little bit.
Okay.
So before we end, Jenna usually asks this question, but she's been gracious enough to
It's
give it
just
to me.
a great question.
Can you tell us a little bit about can you tell us your favorite story about treating a dancer or a performer?
On a whole, I'd say my favorite time in treating performers is treating them in their environment backstage. So having that, having that moment of feeling like a little bit of part of the crew and being in that backstage environment is a lot of fun for me, but also it's revealing to me as to what their environment is that they're working in. So some of them are going up and down several flights of stairs just to get to their dressing room, or when they have to cross the stage, it gives it a little bit more reality of what they're really dealing with. And I noticed that the backstage environment, the culture can shift a little bit depending on the nature of the show. And one that sticks out in mind for me is La Cage aux Folles, where it's a really fun show, and backstage it was very fun-loving. Everyone was so lovely to each other. Lots of glitter and feathers and kisses and hugs, and so it was just a really loving backstage environment, and that was a lot of fun for me to work on.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Suzanne. And thank you to our listeners for joining us for another episode of Physiotherapy Performance Perspectives. Join us on the first Monday of every month for the next episode.
To hear more of our episodes, click on the link in the description below to view our website. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/PT Performance Perspectives to stay informed. And finally, if you want to get in touch, email us at ptperformanceperspectives@gmail.com. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much, you guys.